Resume the meeting.
Am I going first? Yeah.
We have completed item A of the non-action items, the discussion on the county-wide half-cent sales tax. We'll go to B. I guess perhaps the clerk should read the item. We can resume our normal processes.
It is a discussion on the 2015-2019 capital improvement program and the 2015-2017 capital improvement budget for general obligation bond and other fund project budgets.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. So we have talked several times over the past several months about a new approach to addressing the capital improvement plan and the capital improvement budget, specifically to allow us to take a much more in-depth look at allow you to take a much more in-depth look at the projects that are planned, and then once approved, it allows better design and better flow of work so that we don't get ourselves stuck in terms of not finishing projects on time and a lot of the problems that come with it. So what we're really starting today is going to be a fairly grueling march through the CIP and COB plan over the next month. And what we want to do is just provide an outline of the overall project, and like we did about 2 months ago with 2014, is we'll bring all of those projects forward for review and approval individually in the next month. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Nikki Lee, the city's budget manager, and I believe that we will have some other people maybe join you throughout the process, but.
Okay, well, Nikki.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and City Council. Like was just explained to you tonight, we're going to begin a few conversations. We're going to have a series of conversations related to the 2015 through 2019 capital improvement plan and also the corresponding 2015 through 17 capital improvement budget. So really the beginning part of this presentation is meant to be a supplement to the capital improvement plan document, which you all should have received by now, and it's also available online for members of the public. So I'm just going to hit on a few highlights that was summarized in that document that was presented to you. And the second half of this presentation will hopefully be a pretty good discussion, time for Q&A from all of you about a certain subset of some of the projects, specifically the general obligation bond projects and the other funds, which are the federal funds and the street sales tax. So just to begin, like I just mentioned, we are starting this year a new CIP book format. And so what was sent to all of you and also available online is really a document that's meant to kind of frame the whole capital improvement plan a little bit more than what we've done in the recent history, and really just kind of present it in a way that's a little bit more organized, present a little bit more of a big picture of how it fills in. And what we've done with how we've laid it out is we've met all of the Government Financial Officer Association, so the GFOA standards for what they expect out of a capital improvement document and preparing that. And as you see in the book in front of you, it really just presents basically a summary of the process. It highlights any of the major projects. It talks about project types, project definitions, funding sources, summary of some of our debt service information, and then in the back has an individual project sheet for all of the projects included. And just a few highlights that I want to touch on. Again, so you guys have heard this a couple of times, so I don't want to speak about it too much, but we are planning this year to adopt this before the capital improvement plan, or we're planning to adopt the capital improvement plan before the operating budget. And really the idea is that then the operating budget can encompass anything that you've included in the plan. So for example, if you're asking us to implement anything into our operating budget using cash, we need to do that before we adopt the budget. That way we can work it into the budget. The other major update is that we're asking you to adopt 3 years of a capital improvement budget, and that's really because some of our major projects really involve 3 years of planning. So that's really the update for 3 years instead of 2 years. And finally, on May 20th, you're going to be receiving a global resolution, which what that is that's one resolution with 3 years of capital budgets attached. So in adopting that one resolution, you're adopting 3 years of capital budgets. So you'll see that resolution and you'll be able to review it before that time. A couple of highlights about that resolution. Number one, you still have the flexibility to amend project budgets. So each year we're going to be amending the capital improvement plan. So we'll be doing the 16 through 18. And in that will encompass any updates that we know about for the out years for projects. But also, if you're during a year, so in 15, if we have an update to a capital improvement project, we will be able to amend that resolution still and amend the project budget with your all's approval. So just want to highlight really quickly, we do have a pretty good project prioritization process. Really, the reason for this is that we have far more infrastructure needs in the city than we have funding for. So just wanted to bring to you and the public's attention that we do put all of our projects through prioritization. We have an internal exercise where we use the following criteria, and these are consistent criteria that we use for different types of processes around the city. And these are detailed for you a little bit more in the capital improvement book, but I would be happy to answer any questions about those. And also, we like to frame the CIP by types of projects, and really what this does is this helps us prioritize and make sure that we are doing a variety of infrastructure projects around the city. For example, we want to be doing projects in neighborhoods. We want public safety projects, which could be police and fire. Quality of life, right now that's primarily zoo projects, but if we had anything else, that certainly could be a quality of life project that would land in this category. And utilities is going to be mainly your water, wastewater, and stormwater. And with a lot of projects, there's a lot of overlap. So for example, bike lanes, that could be something that's quality of life. It could be streets, it could be traffic. So of course, there are some projects that are going to be hitting up more than one category. So we just made a judgment call on each of those about which category those would fit into. Wanted to highlight here a couple of projects, and mainly this is for the public. I recognize this is a very long capital improvement plan, and there are literally hundreds of projects in here. So what I wanted to do was gather really what are the biggest projects in the next coming years in each of the major categories. In the neighborhood category, there's some annual neighborhood infrastructure program, and we'll be talking more about that here in a few minutes. But that's one we do in conjunction with our federal funds to target certain neighborhoods. Public safety, the biggest project you'll see in the next few years is a proposed new fire station, which we can speak more to. Traffic, we have an annual traffic safety and signal projects. Streets, these are your two biggest street expansions coming up in the next couple of years. Quality of life, we have a zoo pond and a zoo greenhouse, which we can answer any questions about. And utilities, these are the major utilities coming up in wastewater, stormwater, and your water. And we'll be answering more questions about the utility projects on the May 13th meeting. And here I just wanted to show you, we do have a map of all of the projects. And once we adopt all of this, once we finalize the CIP and adopt the projects, this is definitely something we'd like to have online for members of the public so they can see. This one looks a little bit different than the one you've seen in your book because the one in the book is a PDF, and this is an online live version. So as you have questions tonight about specific projects, we'd be happy to pull up this map, highlight any projects, show you where any of the locations are, and I can definitely send you a link as well. Of course, another important part of the CIP are our funding sources. These are our major funding sources that we really have every year in the CIP, but of course, in any given year, we're always looking for more funding sources. There could be other funding sources that come across. These are the major ones. We have cash, we have the city half-wide sales tax, federal funds, GO bonds, and revenue bonds. And as you can see by the graph here, we have a pretty good spread of which of the funding sources we use for all of our projects. So that concludes my introductory information. What we'd like to do now is walk through really all of the GO obligation projects. And the way we'd like to structure this, if it works for you, is that I'll walk through pretty much all of the non-public works projects, and then I'll switch over to Doug Whitaker, and he'll be up here to answer and explain any of the public works projects, if that's okay with you.
Do you have questions? Are there questions or comments at this point? I had one on the, if you're on page 7 in the booklet, which lists the summary of projects. Could we have a list of the projects approved for 2014,
Sure.
13, 14,
Yeah.
and their status? Because I know sometimes when we look at these for the future, we don't know what happened or what's going to happen this year or whether it will
Yeah.
happen or not. And that's very helpful.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and that's something maybe I can get into the habit of every year before we do the CIP,
Yeah.
sending out a summary. This year, we were lucky in that you guys just talked about 14 in January, but I'm with you, there can and should be some updates about those. But next year, you'll be talking about 16 a year out from talking about
Yeah.
the 15 projects, so.
Well, usually
can
on
certainly
this
provide
sheet, we
that.
have the last 2 years. I mean, in the past, we've always
Oh,
had,
okay,
it's always been the last 2 year, or some point,
okay.
the last 2 years, so you see what the trend is. Because sometimes in here, in 15, we're spending the second half of a project, and you have to stop and remember, oh yes, last year we approved the first
Yeah,
half.
and in some of the project budgets that you'll receive attached to the May 20th resolution, we do talk about prior year funding was X, but I could definitely see how that'd
Okay.
be helpful in this format, so,
Did you have a,
thank
yes,
you.
Brandon?
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
in addition to the quarterly report that's coming out, that will include all of the open projects for geo, water, stormwater. And so those will be included in the quarterly report on a quarterly
Okay,
basis.
good, thank you, thank you. Good. Ms. Hiller?
Thank you. I know that the format's changing, and I did not bring my spreadsheets from last year, but
Uh-huh.
starting about 2 years ago, we realized not only the prior year, because especially if people are geographically looking at how it's broken out, there's often more than just is happening in this 5-year span and with just bonded projects. And so, yes, we had the prior years, but also we had items that we definitely wanted to do that we weren't gonna bond. Either we didn't know what the source was gonna be, or it was gonna be a grant source, or even the leases that we had because they were capital expenses and we needed to see them somewhere. And they have disappeared this year. Can you help me with that?
I think mainly what I've done is pretty much modeled this off of what you did in the 14, which didn't really include any of those projects that were basically they were unspecified funding sources, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and the bikeways is one, and we had it in for 500,000 a year, and we
Uh-huh.
stubbed it in. We weren't expecting to bond it, but wanted it to be there. And I know it wasn't the only one. It's the one I think of right now, so that it was on the radar as part
Yeah.
of the capital improvement plan
Okay,
with unspecified funding. Because otherwise, I remember when I first came on the council, there were big street projects like Southwest Sixth Street that's on
Yeah.
here now that weren't on there anywhere, and they were the worst streets in town. And it was like the staff just put them in sort of this nether thing where people just knew about it, but
yeah.
it wasn't on a plan.
Yeah,
It seemed odd.
I could see, so pretty much it'd be a kind of a pending list of, these are the projects we know are out there that maybe aren't included in this CIP, but we know we're recognizing they need to be done. We're looking for funding sources. We've got that list because when we put the CIP together, starting back last fall, the first step was to gather from staff and from everybody, what projects do you know that are out there that you're wanting us to work in? And of course, in going through the prioritization and knowing how much money we have, we couldn't do all of those. So what you're seeing is what we could do. But I could see that basically be an addendum to this, that would be, here's all the projects that are in the pending status.
Especially since we started the discussion about shifting to cash
Mm-hmm.
5 years ago, and if it was a capital project, we had found ourselves drifting to where we were bonding projects that cost as little as $100,000, or that were stacked to be $100,000. And as we looked to convert stuff that we were borrowing on that really should have been cash, we wanted to see them somewhere. So I would appreciate seeing that brought on.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. And then also to that point, I think everybody recognizes that we'd like to use more cash where possible for projects. So I would say that some of these projects on this list, especially on the utility side, we put in here as approval, that way we can get approval for whatever funding source we may need, but if and when cash is available, of course, before we go out to actually get the bond money for that bond series, we will always stop and evaluate, is this really what we want to do? So we do have another time to evaluate that.
But as we can shift
Okay.
into actually planning.
Go on.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, go on. I'm sorry, another question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mansprecher.
Did you hand the same one of these out to everybody?
The
Or-
presentation?
Yeah.
Should be.
I didn't get the jokes on Chad one on accident. No? There's only, and this is no offense to you, Ms.
Uh-huh.
Lee, I appreciate your presentation. There's only one project in District 6 out of 54 projects throughout the entire city. Is this thing on? Is my microphone working? Because every week I talk about this. Every week I talk about the donut hole. Every week I talk about us leaving parts of our city behind. Yet here we are again with a plan that clearly leaves out part of our city. What part do people not understand? This is going to get worse before it gets better. Thank you.
I appreciate that. One thing I can say about the map, and I'd be happy to provide the detail behind that map, there are some projects, for example, let's say street maintenance, some of those ongoing where every year we decide where that money's gonna go and it could go anywhere in the city. For some of those projects, we just had to pick a point for the point of demonstrating it on the map. So it could be that there's more of those recurring, the ones we establish every year that will land in your district that in this map are just showing in one point.
Okay, okay, all right.
So what you could be saying is that that one point in my map could actually not be anything,
It's definitely something, but there,
but it's only one out of
there may
54.
be more that once we get to, like, for example, that year of the street maintenance and we decide what we're doing with that 14 million that year, once we get to 16, every year we reestablished that. And those actually have their own much more detailed maps on the side. Maybe Public Works can speak a little bit about that, but every time we get to the new year of those ongoing projects, I mean, if we included all of those details on this one map, it would just be too much for one map, and we don't know where the 16 points are gonna go yet. That's just one, I didn't mean to detract from your statement, but I'm just saying that for some of the ongoing projects, we did have to pick just one point.
Thank you.
All right, please proceed.
So really what I'll do is I'll walk through just a brief overview of each of these projects, and you all let me know if you wanna ask questions as we go, if you wanna ask after we do each kind of subsection. I recognize that up on the screen, it's a little bit small. For you all and for everyone in the audience, this is available in the CIP book, so you can see a little more details, but I wanted to keep it on one screen because I wanted you to see the big picture of all the GEO bond projects on one page, just to keep it all as part of the big picture. So first of all, the neighborhood infrastructure project, you all are used to seeing this, I believe, every year. This is the project where we target certain areas, and H&D coordinates it with federal funds. And we can certainly speak to you more about what we're planning on doing with the 15 monies, but the 15 program will include focusing mainly on the Topeka East and Oakland neighborhoods. And you'll see along with the resolution that you'll receive on the 20th, we have a pretty specific list of examples of what's going to be done in 15 with those funds. Moving on to public safety, these are all fire department projects at this point. All of the apparatus, I think you're used to seeing at this point that right now the city's approach to replacing any of our fire apparatus is to go on the schedule based on the life of the vehicle and to go ahead and bond for those project costs. So as you can see, based on the schedule of when the lives of the vehicles are going to be needing to be replaced, we have a couple that fall in 15, a couple that fall in 16, and a couple that fall in 17. And certainly the chief can answer any specific questions if you have any about those. But pretty much it's the same answer for each of those, that those particular apparatus are at the end of their lives. The fire station and the secure staging facilities are two new projects on this list. This is the South Fire Station. This is actually would be Fire Station 14 if Fire Station 13 proceeded. And what this is this would service the extreme south end of the city. So these are the estimated costs at this point to begin in 16, and really, as you can see, the majority of the construction would be in 2017. And the secure staging facility, this is a request from the fire department that involves the design and construction of a staging facility, which is really kind of a storage area. It's for training grounds. It's a climate control area for some of their vehicles. Certainly, they can answer more questions if you have about that detail here.
Are there questions about the public safety areas, those pertaining to the fire, that group that we just reviewed? At some point, I know when we get in more into the budget, we'll want to look at the status on Fire Station 13 and see where that is.
Yeah, and this is a great example of how
But,
a CIP project certainly impacts the operating budget.
Where it is, yeah.
Well, and also the prior year.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Campos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In any of your projections, do you foresee a mill increase over this 5 years?
When we put this together, we just focus on the debt service fund, and we work up to the $9 million policy that the council has set. So we pretty much have in our debt service forecast as much as we can afford up to that $9 million. In any given year, I mean, we have to evaluate where our mill is and how much we can afford in any given fund, but we don't specifically have in here any projection for having increased the mill for any of this.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah. Mrs. Ortiz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You talked about Topeka East. That covers a lot. So I know in the sort it's Oakland and what part of East Topeka?
And I can, we can email this out if you want, and Brad, maybe you can come up and answer any questions, but the list of neighborhoods that I have are the historic North Topeka East, Oakland neighborhoods, really, and then I've got, gosh, streets and sidewalks that
I think those
get
are the
into
two.
detail. I can read those streets and
Yeah.
sidewalks, or I can email this after.
Yeah, High Crest is in there. Oakland.
Sorry, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Brad.
For 2015 CIP, the neighborhood infrastructure piece, that would be the projects for the historic North Topeka East and the Oakland neighborhoods. High Crest, which you mentioned, and then Central Island Park, those were part of the 13 and 14 CIP, or not, I'm sorry, 12 and 13 CIP,
Thank you for that clarification.
And some of that is just being completed.
and getting underway, yeah.
Yeah, it's underway, it's, that's why they overlap in a sense. It gets confusing
Right.
when we say a specific year, yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
Mayor.
I've been through, get through that. Okay, anything else on that section? Public safety, seeing none, proceed.
No, no, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
So we're ready for traffic.
Okay. We'll welcome Doug Whitaker up here.
Mr. Whitaker.
Thank you.
Good evening, council. I'll take you through looking at the traffic. The first one there, traffic safety projects. This is the 185,000 that we've been setting aside each year for safety issues throughout the city related to intersections or need a traffic signal, or additional turn lanes or median or something to that effect. The project that's been identified in 2015 is around the 2100 block of Wanamaker there at the Toys R Us entrance, and there's the Core First Bank on the other that is a very high accident rate. And so that's one that we've identified needs to be looked at, it's one of our major accident areas.
And 185,000 doesn't go very far.
No, and it's basically to put some medians in to direct traffic better there than get the cross traffic that's running into each other right now.
Do we have those in our book someplace?
That would be page 20 would be the sheet. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant to say that page 20 is the technical sheet for that one. Should be, is it?
Yes, that is correct.
Would be the detail sheet. The next item would be the traffic signal replacement. We have 100, as is noted there, we have 183 traffic signals within the city. We need to replace, they've got about a 30-year life cycle on them, so we're trying to replace 4 per year. And so that's earmarked, the 640,000 per year is to just continually update and upgrade traffic signals and maintain them as the equipment wears out and has to be updated.
Any questions on traffic? Moving on,
Got it.
Mr. Campos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. What matrix do we use for establishing an intersection that currently has a traffic signal and taking that out?
As far as in removing it,
Yes, removing traffic signals.
it would be done through, the traffic engineer would do a traffic analysis of that, check all of there are like 8 or 9 warrants that are used to verify that you should have a traffic signal. If traffic has changed in that intersection that we don't meet any of the warrants, then that would be a way that we could remove the signal. And when I say warrants, it's guidelines that the federal guidelines set up for us through the MUTCD.
But as a matter of policy, we do not take away traffic signals just so we can't afford them, correct?
No, we don't, no, it would be because either traffic has changed in that area, we have a couple right now we're looking at.
Sure.
That, they're not warranted anymore. But no, we would not remove them just because we can't afford to maintain it.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, anything else on traffic? Moving on to streets.
Okay, under the streets, the first one is the complete streets. Again, this is money that had been set aside each year, on $100,000 per year to better serve, putting in street elements, sidewalks, bike lanes, pedestrian flashers, those type things. I believe for 2014 and 15, both the complete streets, and if you look down there, the one after infill, the city infrastructure, we've identified those funds right now. We have, as you remember, you approved back in the earlier this year we applied for 2 grants, one for the Washburn Lighting District, and then the other was the bikeway, another phase of the bikeways plan, and that's where those matching funds would come from, would be one of those 2 funds there. Infill sidewalks, it would be page 23. This again is earmarked at $150,000 per year, and it's to fill in for sidewalks where we would need them. This year, we are looking at, in 14, we're looking at 28th Street and 25th Street just west of California. That's where we had gotten some high areas, to fill in. The 13 projects just apparently are just out for bid, and that includes the 37th Street along, between Burlingame and Walmart, and then also 17th Street over from Washburn east to somewhere's right around the French restaurant. Don't ask me to pronounce that, but that area right there it would be the south side. So those 2 projects are out for bid right now, and then the 14 ones are being designed in those areas.
Thank you for that update.
The next project is 37th Street. That's southwest Burlingame Road to Gage Boulevard, page 25. Phase 1 was approved in 2014, and actually 2013 was the preliminary design, and then construction for phase 1 was approved in 14. This would be the second phase, which would then be for 15 and 16 for full construction, and that would be from Gage all the way to Burlingame is that project. The next set of projects, the next project is Southwest 6th Street, from Wanamaker to just west of I-70, the bridge, and that's up around Security Benefit from the roundabout over around to the bridge there. This one, just so that you understand, there is some geo bonding money to the tune of $600,000. We would also use some of the federal fund exchange money of $400,000, and then we can also use half-cent sales tax to do that project. And then again, with the half-cent sales tax, there's 2 lanes there. We can use money for that. We just can't widen the road. We can't add curbs and gutters and those type things. So that's why we'd have to use the federal fund exchange fund. So we actually use 3 funds to try to fund that road.
When do you see that? We're doing this all for 600,000. Is this planning that in 2015? Do we start, I don't know, design work, have we done design work on that?
We would be getting started into design, and then construction would be 15, 16. With right-of-way, if there's any right-of-way or utility relocations, those type things would work in there. And again, there's actually 600,000 being earmarked in 2015 from the GO bond portion. Right. Then there's another 400,000 from the federal funds, and then sales tax funds.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Doug, that street is terrible. You mean to tell me that there's streets worse than that one?
From
Fairlawn to Wanamaker on West 6th Street.
I guess I'm sorry, I'm not following the question.
You're saying that we're not even gonna come up with a plan until 2015?
No, we will. This is the 15 to 16, or 15 to 18, CIP, and we're getting ready, doing the design, and, not preliminary design and then construction of that with the funding from with 15 funds.
So it won't be done until when?
It would be under construction in 15. It'd have to be done in phases, because again, we can't close, obviously we have
No,
to
I
keep the road open.
understand that, but as bad as it is now, that we have to wait that long, that street is terrible. It's pothole, 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 pothole. It's just terrible. I feel bad for the people at security benefit that come out, in and out of there. But what I'm saying is, that street is better than, there's streets worse than that?
Yeah, there's, streets in bad condition all, in several areas
No,
of
I
the city.
understand that,
But I
but-
mean, yes, Sixth Street, we are attacking, the most, poorest shape of streets, and the ones we, earmarked this year with a half-cent sales tax.
Now, I think, well, what you're saying is we're working at it as quickly as we can. We're gonna do design work this year, and that's, have to get that done.
Yes, and then
It takes
get
about a
right
year to
into-
do that. And wasn't this on the original, when we talked about the half-cent, the county-wide half-cent sales tax? At one time, I thought I saw this
I think originally we
on
did,
the
but we knew
list,
we
the
couldn't wait.
first list we looked at.
We
yeah.
couldn't wait till 17 when that new tax would come in.
Even if we
so-
bonded it,
Yeah, so we would.
right, Mrs. Miller? Go ahead.
is- So
Yes.
we knew we couldn't wait that long, so
Okay.
we moved it up on,
So
on
I
this
think
list.
that's, we're moving as quickly as we can.
Yes,
on
and
list
we've
6.
got to get the design and then obviously any utility relocations and then reconstruct that road.
That begs a question, if we're using the some federal funds for that. I know at one point we were going to do 10th Street between Gage and Fairlawn using federal funds.
Right.
Are those the same federal funds?
And some of those funds are from that project, yes. Where we
Is-
were narrowing that, where we're proposing to narrow that one from 5 to 3 lanes, we were bringing excess funds over from there
Okay.
to apply towards Sixth
But
Street.
that, so like those, that is a federal funded project, so it would not be on this list, correct? The 10th Street.
The 10th Street, is not in this list because it had been a previous project, and we can't bring that back for, 6 months? If we bring it back with any design changes, so.
Okay. But it wouldn't be bonded, it would be federal funds.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
That was my
It
point.
was federally funded. No, it was
Federally
not a
funded.
bonded, it was not a bonded project.
Correct. Mr. Campos?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is it possible to do a mill and overlay from Gage all the way to Wanamaker, just patch us over until we can actually finish the plans and put the money together to make it a 3-lane?
From Gage to all the way, no, I mean, the substructure is so bad, it would still be expensive to do the mill and overlay, but it wouldn't hold up. And if the substructure is already, we've got the sunken, in the road, and the base is already saturated in certain areas. If you pave over it, it may last, but as you get your heavy traffic on it, it'll just fail very quickly.
If I reckon correctly, if I may, Mr. Mayor, there is no wastewater underneath Sixth Street from Gage all the way to Wanamaker. It's culverts, correct?
I believe so. Yeah, I know the Fairlawn to Gage, back to Gage area, I know that area there's no curb and gutter.
Right.
And I don't believe there is going, west either
Well,
from that area.
I really do respect the tremendous burden you have accepted by coming to our city, and you have my prayers, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, proceed. Well, I'm sorry, was there, I'm sorry, Mrs. Hiller?
I wanted to ask about 10th Street as well, because this gets back to my question earlier to Ms. Lee. If 10th Street is part of our plan, and it's something you all are thinking is a priority and needs to be done between 2015 and 2018, I think it should be on here. I know you were cutting back the scope of the project. Now, were you only able to save $400,000 and cutting it from 5 lanes to 3 lanes?
We haven't finished the design to know how much we could, trim back out of that. We felt very comfortable with being able to say we could take 400,000 over. We can funds can also be used towards bridges and like that we have, out to the, in the future, that we have to. So, I mean, we will come up with a new budget, but we have not totally redesigned that project because we weren't given we don't have the approval to move ahead.
Okay, let's go to California.
California, 33rd to 37th Street. This one, we've got, it's a 2-year, you know, we've got the preliminary design out there right now is approved in 14. 15 would be to do utility moves and also any right-of-way, and then construction would begin in 13 for that section of California.
16.
Yeah, 16, yes, 15, 16, I'm sorry, yes. Then the 29th through 33rd is we would go into preliminary design in 15, do the utilities and right-of-way in 16, and then 17, as you can see, is when we have the funds earmarked for construction for that section of the road. And as a note on that, since I didn't come up during the county half-cent sales tax, just for the benefit from 37th to 45th, that project we had listed on as a county half-cent sales tax because it's a 2-lane road with no curbs and gutters, no sidewalks, no anything. We can't use, well, when I say we can't use, half-cent sales tax, city half-cent sales tax cannot rebuild the road and add those functions of the curb and gutter, sidewalks, and all of that. And widen the road. So we were looking to put that there. If not, if the half-cent county, if that isn't one of the projects on the list, then we'll have to adjust the out years of our, you know, CIP to try to cover that section of California.
Okay.
The next one is back to 6th Street. This was Southwest Gage to Fairlawn. And this would widen 6 between Gage and Fairlawn, and again, add the curbs and gutters and lighting and all of that. And that project, we're looking to start the design in 17, do again right-of-way in 18, and then 19 would be construction.
And you know, on these, again, just for clarification, we use the half-cent sales tax to upgrade the streets we have, and we cannot make any adjustments to them, additions. These are new streets, in a sense, that we have to design, and so we are, in a sense, upgrading them, many times enlarging, putting in sidewalks, et cetera.
Correct.
So just, I think it's good for people to know, there's two different things, two different apples and oranges here. One is a half-cent sales tax projects, and then here are our GO bonded projects, right? No, Mrs. Ortiz?
What I have struggled with and what I have a problem is, we have a street that's existing. Why can't we use some of that money and then whatever money that we need to do the rest of it? I never understood that. I think I talked to the city attorney about that. Did I not, Chad? Yeah, we have. We've had this discussion because when we, and I had the notes, I pulled the notes when we voted on that. We had a 5-hour discussion, if you remember, Richard. And one of the things, I just struggle with this. It says existing, so we have a two-lane street. Why we can't use some of that money for that, and then the other parts of that, because I have a street in my district that's a gravel road. And one of the questions I asked was, is that considered a street? And can that money be used for that? And they said yes. Because it's a street, even though it's a gravel road. It's an existing street. So I really struggle with that, and I don't know how we can look at that, or the city manager can look at that, to see why we can't use some of that funding for some of these projects, or, you know, to cut down on the cost. That's always bothered me, and it still bothers me, because we say, no, we can't use that money over here, because we don't have a street. It is a street. It's an existing street, and that was the key word, is existing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can't put, like I think on 21st, we had to find money to put in the sidewalks and the curbs, that was not there, but they have some sales tax paid for that street. And so I just really think we need to look deeper into that. I don't know if we're not wanting to split the funding there, but I still say, since they told me, and I'll be happy to share the notes with you guys from that meeting. It was a long meeting, And I just remember that just stuck out in my head, so that's always bothered me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And I think you look at using all the funds available from all the different sources
Yes.
to do the
We would,
projects
we
that
could
we
use,
can.
we could use some half-cent sales tax with the existing 2 lanes in that area, but adding the curbs, gutters, sidewalks, drainage, you know, in a lot of cases, as you know, if it's a ditch, we have to put in drainage, which then is piping, inlets, and all of that. All of that has to be funded from something else than the half-cent sales tax in that situation.
And I understand, if I may, Mr. Mayor. I understand that, but it still seems like that project would be cheaper if we were able to use that money on existing streets, curbs, or gutterings. And that's why I say, it bothers me when we say we can't use a half-cent sales tax because it's not a street. It is a street. It's an existing street. It just have to cut the funding from different sources, and we do it all the time.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Hiller?
Quick clarification. If the half-cent sales tax countywide one passes, the Southwest Sixth Street project from Gage to Fairlawn has been pretty much first on every list anybody's had. So if that were funded, you would create maybe another block in here for countywide half-cent sales tax and move this out of the GO
Yes,
grouping,
yes.
which would loosen up that funding as well.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, next.
Next one is the Kansas Avenue Streetscape Project. That project is back when the budget for downtown 6th to 10th was passed, there was, the $888,032 was pedestrian enhancements that was set aside and said would be brought back in a later CIP. We're bringing that back in the 2015 CIP. This is basically, there's the infrastructure, which we're getting ready to break ground on and take care of the streets and the water line and services and sidewalks and parking. Then there's the private enhancements, which is the parks and all, and the pocket parks. Then there's this, which is some of the additional items such as electrical that we would need along there to, if you wanted to have any functions at the, you know, along the pocket parks within that area where we're trying to make it a downtown, you know, area to bring entertainment in if they wanted to have something in like a block party, et cetera. So there's the lighting, there's the benches, there's some landscaping, there's all those type things, and that's what's included in this package, which was the original $888,000.
Okay, Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for a clarification, the reason that's being presented as it is, when we did the original budget, there was a lot of discussion about, is the private sector gonna step up and are really gonna do this? Do we wanna commit to these sort of things prior to them doing their effort? They set a target of raising $1.8 million. I think they're currently at $2.4 million. So the agreement that we had with them was that at the point in time that they demonstrated their ability to raise the private funds, that we would then come back as part of the CIP. So that's why we stand here today on this particular item.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, proceed.
Okay. The next one is, it's noted as bike lanes on Southeast 6th and Southeast 10th Avenue bridges over I-70. This we are putting in as basically a placeholder, and it's in 2019, is KDOT is working with us that when they redo the Polk Quincy Viaduct and redo those bridges at those intersections, we would just have to pay for to add the bikeways on the bridges. Since they're rebuilding the bridges, it would just be the city's responsibility to add some funds in to get these bikeways over. Obviously, with the proposed schedule, this is just an earmark for 19. I see when we come back with the 16 to 20, it'll probably slide to 20, and so that we keep it in there just as an earmark until they actually do the Polk Quincy Viaduct, which is, you know, anticipated early, 2020 to 25 is the gauge I've heard. So that is more just an earmark there, so we don't lose track of that, because we have that opportunity. And these bikeways are included in the bike master plan, so therefore we're trying to, you know, it's in the master plan, and this would follow the plan.
Okay, questions, comments? Moving on to quality of life.
I am going to cover, and if there's these two, and if there's any specific questions you have, I'll have Brendan come up. The first is zoo repair, and it's really pond repair. There's a series of 3 ponds on the zoo property. They are having trouble holding water. They've needed to be cleaned and dredged out for many years. One's got an erosion problem that actually threatens the integrity of the zoo's bear exhibit. And then they also are at the lowest point in Gage Park, and they do take a large amount of stormwater runoff through those ponds, and so they do need to be rehabilitated, and that's what this project is. And the staff there is recommending the project be split between 2 years, just that 2015 being recommended for study and design. The
Are there
next-
questions? Okay, the other one?
The next zoo project is the greenhouse and storage building. This would be to construct a 40 by 60 greenhouse / storage building in the zoo service area. And really where that's come about, they did share greenhouse space with the county, but the county is expanding on the park side, so they're kind of losing that place there for storage, et cetera. And then also due to the continued, they used to use the old hoof stock barn, and with the new zoo quarantine building being built, that building is gone. So that this is, you know, it would be 2,400 square foot building, of which 800 square foot would be designed for a greenhouse. So again, this is just for operational functions of the zoo.
Okay. Council, are there questions in general on the GO bond project summary? Mrs. Hiller?
If we could back up for a moment to the zoo pond repair, I'm concerned that there's two concerns. One is there's no stub in even for a project budget to be a placeholder, I would think, for 2016 with what you're talking about. But the other question, which really would be, well, it could be for either of you, I suppose. I know we're gonna get to the budget itself shortly, but are we making any progress toward reestablishing the fund whereby we could do engineering for projects with cash out of our operating budget? It bothers me to spend $230,000 for $180,000 worth of work and then another $100,000 to bond it. So whether we're making progress at all in your master planning or yours toward being able to just hire somebody with cash to do planning.
Councilwoman, one clarification. Since the time I got the paperwork to Doug that Doug accurately presented, it was decided that we could not put design in a separate year. So that is the total
Right, I mean, it
project
has to be
budget.
tied to a project to
Yes.
bond it anyway.
Now, to your question, at this point in time, the zoo's budget does not support cash-based engineering work. Our only option is to put it in the bonded package.
Unless we're making progress at Public Works to have an engineering fund again. So the question would go back to you.
Okay. And as far as working that fund in, I'm not that, I'll be very honest with you, that familiar with trying to build that engineering fund, other than, you know, basically we're funded through the, general fund for most of engineering, and it would have to be building that in, other than obviously the sales tax, which we do, use those funds to pay cash for any design related to those projects.
That would be a no then. I would encourage you to see if you could do it. Thank you.
Thank you. That completes the discussion. We have one person who signed up to speak in public comment on this agenda item, Joe Ledbetter.
Governing body, first comments I have are for High Crest. I'm their president of the NIA. There's 6,000 people out there. I'm going to put these photos in the record. Now, I know these were emailed, so I hope everybody got them earlier. But the first one is one I put in earlier of the 2,900 block of southeast Fremont, and the whole road is, it's really falling apart, and it hasn't had really good maintenance in probably many years. The next two photos are areas south of 29th. One of them's on Iowa, the other one's near Colfax. These, what I was told by Public Works at our last meeting, not this one, but the last one before that at Highcrest, was that we were gonna get about $1.7 million for repairs of streets that are in the northeast section of Highcrest, and some of the homeowners over there have told us they have not seen any city maintenance in over 20 years on those roads. And they're in really horrible shape. Now, there's a couple blocks that are all right, but they've got ditches, and you see the street actually kind of starting to almost collapse into the sides of the ditches on some of the streets. So we're asking that maintenance, those mill overlays be done this year. We were told we'd also have another $1.75 million for the area around Adams Park, which is not quite as bad, but almost as bad. And those areas have probably not had routine maintenance in at least 10 years that I'm aware of, working with Highcrest, but probably much longer. So I'm appealing on behalf of Highcrest that actually be done in those repairs. I know they're not specified here, but we would ask for that. I noted with interest you're going to do something with the levees downtown. I thought that was interesting, at least the copy I saw. I want to make sure I cover, okay, and then California. The people I've talked to and the people in Highcrest, I don't know about the other side of the street, but in Highcrest, they want to see a 4-lane or 5-lane. They want to see something similar to Croco. People that are further south that would feed into that shopping area and actually do their shopping, you know, from areas further south in Barrington and those areas, would use that street if it was a proper road more than just a 2-lane with ditches. I think you're actually hurting the economic development of 29th and California with all the shopping that needs to happen there, and a lot of it's gone out over the years, and now we're getting some more back in. When you're not paying attention to the infrastructure, I think you're actually hurting the economic development of those shopping areas, and they're probably not, you know, generating as much revenue as they would if they just had proper streets to them. And I'm talking about main thoroughfares like California. So California's been neglected for way too long, you know, probably 20 years. It really needs to be properly widened, and I think more than 3 lanes is appropriate. But anyway, that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ledbetter. And I had intended to have, give the opportunity for Ms. Lee and Mr. Whitaker to close, make any other comments they wish, and then I somehow thought we needed to get our public speaker in. So if you want to come back, and if there's some other comments that you wish to make, I certainly want to give you that opportunity to do so.
Do it the wrong way. We had the next discussion, we weren't doing any of the utilities tonight, but we were gonna cover the half-cent sales tax and the federal fund exchange projects to bring those, so we brought all of the street to you this week. So the first would be under the city half-cent sales tax, it's maintain, improve the existing streets. That's the half-cent sales tax for street construction. And there should be a list on page 78, sheet 70, yeah, jump to page 78. And this is, obviously, this is, you know, doing the construction to the existing city streets, curbs, gutters, and sidewalks. Again, we can't add anything, but we can replace what is there. And what we've got is the first four there, Northeast Seward, Southwest Mulvane, Southwest Hope, and Southwest 15th, were all approved in 2014 to begin. And so we would look at, they're under design right now, we would be doing construction in 2015 on those four. Southwest 6th Avenue, again, would be, we've already talked about that. This is the, would be the sales tax portion for that project, where we are also using federal funds in the GO bonds. And that would get under design in 2015, with construction 15-16. The next one, Northwest Lyman Road, was approved this year for 2014, the design, and along with that is widening that road there. And then also there's the neighborhood empowerment grant for the sidewalk, which kind of ties in with that. So that would be, again, a construction in 15. It's under design right now. Looking out, since this is, we're lifting some of the projects that would also be in 16 and even out in the 17 with some of the construction. South Topeka Boulevard from 15th to 21st would be, we would, you know, we're bringing here that we'd start design in 15 with construction in 16. Southwest 25th, Wanamaker to Fairlawn would be in 15 and 16. And then we've got Southwest 12th from Kansas Avenue to Gage Boulevard. That would be design construction in 15-16. And Huntoon would be from Washburn Avenue out to McAllister, which is just right where I think 12th comes down to Huntoon. Both of those, and I'm saying 16-17, with those, since they're one-way streets, you know, each way, we obviously can't shut both of them down, so we're gonna have to work those, and those are long sections that we just can't close the whole road. You know, we'll have to do it in phases, and then also schedule so that we don't obviously have traffic blocked going either direction on those roads. So that is the plan on those two. Then there's some bridge repairs that we've got, Southeast 6th, Southwest 8th, and Southeast Golden. And then the local street repair you were approved this year in North Topeka and in the High Crest area to do some mill and overlays in phase 1 for that. And then we were looking at, we would finish up, when I say phase 1, it was kind of the eastern side of High Crest, and you come over the other side of Adams. And there would be the western side, we would do some more mill and overlays there. And then we would also do some additional in the areas up in the North Topeka area that we identified this year. So,
This is the city half-cent
Half-cent
sales
sales
tax.
tax.
We have to keep saying this over and over.
Right.
So we keep the two different ones apart. All right, thank you. And then go on for your next.
The next, under the half-cent sales tax, is we've earmarked, you know, ADA, this is page 79, project sheet 79, is we earmark about $300,000 for doing ADA ramps. We're working in the, I think it's kind of the, when I say north central, it's up in for 14. In 15, we have, after 2014, there will be about 400 ramps left that we have identified. With the 300,000, we can get about 65 to 70 ramps per year. And we were looking at Topeka to West Edge Road between 21st to 45th, that section for 15, and then Topeka to Fairlawn, 29th to 45th for 16. And then we would still have about 270 left. The next one is the curbs, gutter, and then we're calling it street maintenance and repair. This is where you'll note that we normally have the 500,000 for curb and gutter projects. We have bumped that up with all of our issues. This is where we're trying to identify to help with snow removal. And by earmarking it in curb, gutter, and street maintenance, we are not locking all of that money into snow, so the only thing we can use it for is snow removal. It would be for street maintenance. And this is to help us better handle a larger snow and get into the neighborhoods and clear those areas faster than we had in the past, and also have the funding for that, to do that. If we didn't have to use all of the funding towards snow, we could put more of that towards curb and gutter. I didn't print out the curb and gutter list, but I have it's about 125 sites or locations per year, and I've got enough for 15, 16, and 17 right now with curb and gutter, and I know there's more to add to the list. So that's addressing the curb and gutter going forward. But just to let you know, with that, normally it was 500,000, we're doing $1.5 million. That's to address trying to utilize it also for snow removal and curb and gutters, et cetera.
Mrs. Heller.
I don't think that the language of that sales tax would allow snow removal with this money. I'm sure you've checked with someone, but in terms of the public's understanding, Councilwoman Ortiz has been talking about how narrowly it was described, and the public was educated. Maintenance and improvement of existing roads, curb and gutters, sidewalks, streetlights. Thank you.
Is there, you,
We-
Mr. Sublette, you want to?
Yeah,
make it?
we worked with Public Works, and there were 3 of us that actually looked at what the ballot question was. And street maintenance, obviously you can buy snow equipment, but in terms of maintaining the streets, we felt comfortable with the ballot question, using that for snow removal, because it's maintenance of an existing street.
Okay, Mr. Manspeaker?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear to me. If it's maintenance and removing snow is maintenance, not removing snow effectively causes more damage to the road, which in turn costs us more money in the long run. So I have no issue with the funds being utilized this way.
Okay, Mrs. Schwartz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is really a different question. And Doug, you came out to my district and visited with about 4 different members of the Shadywood West about the curb and guttering. And at that point, I think we discussed there really wasn't a maintenance plan for curb and guttering. I wanted to see if this is the idea that it's not just gonna be the squeaky wheel that gets the grease and gets those fixed, that there is a plan that the city would have to fix the curb and guttering. That is caused by a lot of the snow. Thank you.
Now, could you? Mrs.
I
Ortiz?
just wanted to comment that I'm comfortable with the maintenance abbreviation for it. I know previously potholes, we thought you could use that to fix potholes because that's part of maintenance, and I guess it's all in who's in charge and what they believe in, because we couldn't get those fixed with that money, but I'm okay with that definition.
Okay, we'll leave this for another, we'll keep going.
Okay.
Probably might come back again, but please continue with your presentation.
Next item is, again, is alley repairs, and we set aside, that's page 81, the project sheet, and we set aside $250,000 for alley repairs, and street department, again, has identified alleys for 15 and 16 that we would utilize out there, and then move on through our list. Again, it's the ones that we know are in bad shape, the ones we get a lot of calls on, and the ones we have to do a lot of rework in each year. So again, that's the alley repair that we usually set aside the $250,000 each year. And then the last one is the 50-50 sidewalk plan, which again, that is where we set aside $60,000, with half of it coming from the citizens, and this is where we will provide, do the project for them, and we pay for 50% of it, and then the homeowner pays for the other 50%. And so that is all of the half-cent sales tax projects, budgets that we deal with. The last one would be federal funds. And those projects, there it is, sorry, are 2 bridges. One is the bridge over Southwest Cherokee Street over Ward Creek, and then the bridge on Southwest 3rd Street over Ward Creek. Those are project budgets 83 and 84. Those are out there, 17 with utility relocation in 18 and 19. The issue there is both bridges are currently under a load rating, meaning they have some issues. They are maintained and inspected so that we can continue to use them, but they're under a load rating, so we've restricted weight across them. And then the last one that you had was really this, the Southwest Sixth Street, Wanamaker to I-70. That's again going back, we've already discussed that. That's the, where we take the 400,000 of federal funds and put towards that project.
And the federal funds for 10th Street are already set aside for that.
They're set aside. We can
But
bank
and
them.
we're using part of them because
We're-
the street was, we're putting it back like a 2-lane or 3-lane or whatever.
3-lane.
Three-lane.
We're looking at a 3-lane if we, you know, if
Three-lane.
it's approved to move forward.
Is that, and that's what traffic studies feels we can,
Yes,
we
we've done
can
additional.
survive with rather than what,
Yes.
okay. All right, other comments? Mr. Campos?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My first one is maintenance, improving existing streets. It's my understanding that as the formula currently is that the money that generated to fix potholes and such for our streets is from a formula that is brought down to us from the state. Has your department at all thought out, now that people are though paying more for gas, but actually receiving less gas, and in light of the efficiencies of cars coming down from the federal government as of late since the Obama administration, have we identified other revenue sources that would help us fund those types of repairs moving forward and keeping in light the nuances I just laid out to you?
I think from funds, as far as from, you know, would be, we work totally off of motor fuel taxes.
Right.
In other areas, general fund will actually put some money towards that. Should we be looking towards that? Probably. Again, other than that, the only other revenue that I would have that I know of would be another tax of some sort. And I don't think we, you know, I'm not obviously pursuing another 0.5-cent sales tax or 1/4% or something like that. But I mean, as far as those are the funding opportunities that I'm aware of, you know, for street maintenance type projects.
Okay. I have two
Okay.
more subsequent questions. I'll make them short. I know we want to get out of here. First one, ADA ramps. Is it our policy just to build the ramps and not build any other sidewalks to accommodate those folks who will, lack of a better term, roll rather than walk?
No, where we would do the ADA ramps are where there are sidewalks. What we're looking at in this program is sidewalks obviously have been out there for years. There's a lot of intersections that the ADA ramps have never been brought up to the proper standard that is now required under the ADA requirements. Those are the ramps we're going out and doing. We're not going out and constructing ramps if there's no sidewalk, other than if you're in a new development. You know, when a developer develops his property and puts his streets and infrastructure in, a lot of cases they do put their ADA ramps in, but the sidewalks are not built until the homes are started to be built in a new subdivision.
Okay, and my last question, Mr. Mayor, if I may. Curbs, gutters, street maintenance and repair. If we're putting money from the 0.5-cent sales tax into this sector specifically for snow removal, why aren't we doing that for street cleaning? The problem that I have is that seedlings get inside of the middle of the cracks, get into the culverts, or excuse me, get into the inlets, various types of stormwater, and therefore affect the integrity of our infrastructure. Why isn't street cleaning included in this? Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you. And I don't mean to jump over Doug, but I do think that we do have a street cleaning schedule, and I think we have internally discussed that we really need to revisit that, both in terms of a process, notification, all the things that we do with that. So if we can hold off on that answer for a while and come back with a more complete answer at a later point, that would probably be more informative.
I've been asking this question for a year, Mr. City Manager. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Is that,
That's all I have to present.
That's
Is there
all,
any other
folks.
questions?
is there anything else on the GEO bond or any of the presentations tonight? Mrs. Zeller?
One more, and it's a question that will back into the discussion we've had. How are we doing on getting our fleet up in terms of all of our trucks, whether it's snow removal, street sweepers. Things were really in bad shape 5 years ago, and then the staff was working to replace and upgrade our fleet for public works street maintenance. How are we doing on that?
We have identified some funds to be able to work and bring some of those trucks up. We also have worked very extensively with fleet management to make sure the trucks are maintained and restored as best we can. And then going forward, I am looking at what are some other opportunities with the fleet organization as to how could we better fund, you know, replacements going forward. And some of that maybe too is what vehicles do we need and what vehicles don't we need.
That's good. Just, not that we have to do things the way we did them before, but the rhythm before was to use in part motor fuels tax and set aside the snow removal budget. And then if it was a good year, that money went into the fleet, and if it wasn't, then everything had to wait. So I hate to see us working that whole rhythm out of the operating budget if we still need equipment. Thank you.
One other that I had thought of earlier, and that is, this, if we want to make any capital improvements to any of our whatever 20-some, 30 buildings we own, this is where it would be. And there is nothing in here for any buildings, any upgrades. Sometimes we've heard about particularly the, where the trucks are, the roofs falling down. And some of those situations, or City Hall, or Holiday, or fire stations, or anything like that. So we're not doing anything with any of those this year, right?
Yep. Mr. Mayor, if I could just comment, certainly when we have that, we look always to fund out of existing funds that we have cash or reserve funds. In this particular case, if we had a large project that wasn't able to be funded in those other cases, such as the zoo, we would bring it and put it part of that. But, you know, we understand, and even going back to Councilmember Hiller's, you know, questions about the fleet, there's a lot of expenses and maintenance items that have not been been kept up for a very long time. And so we are fighting from a fairly disadvantageous position. So we're looking to take the funds that are available to make the fixes as we go forward. I know sometimes the answers are frustrating to you. They're frustrating to us who are trying to manage it on a regular basis. But we understand there's a fleet challenge, we understand there's a facility challenge, but we can't give up. We gotta continue to look at it. So we look at cash first within the operating budgets, and then if we believe it's a significant repair that needs to go into the CIP, we'll bring it forward at that point.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, that concludes that item of the agenda. Next is announcements. And as a part of announcements, as you know, that we no longer have first readings, but according to our agenda, it says, the clerk shall briefly summarize items that are on the agenda for the next scheduled council meeting. So at this point, if the city clerk would give us that overview of next week's agenda.
For next week on the May 13th agenda, we have 2 proclamations, Mental Health Awareness Month and Bike to Work Week. We have 2 presentation schedules, first quarter report and endangered properties list. On the consent agenda, we have a board appointment to the Citizen Advisory Council for Pauline Carter. We have 2 resolutions for Sacred Heart St. Joseph Parish Germanfest 2014. One is to approve a noise exception, the other one's to approve the special event on June 7th and 8th. We have an ordinance that will update our city code regulations to require bike parking for new development. We have a resolution approving a conditional, conditional use permit to approve a cell tower and associated equipment building on the state-owned grounds of Kansas Neurological Institute. And then we'll continue the discussion on the CIP and CIB for utility fund project budgets.
Okay, thank you. And then also want to point out that that agenda for next week's meeting was made available last Thursday. So we do get about 12 days notice of the agendas, that they are posted 12 days prior to our meetings. And then we will go to announcements. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, we talked about Bike Week. We're actually going to do kind of a cool bike ride. We did it last year, ride with the city manager. I will say that I'm injured with a little bit of Achilles tendon problem, so my bike ride might be really short, like maybe a block. But we're going to
That doesn't count.
Okay, 2 blocks.
We'll take you up.
But actually, I just might ride to St. Francis. So, all right, so, but that's happening on the 15th, so that'll be fun. If anybody is interested and available, certainly join us. And then also, I do want to recognize that a lot of work has been done on the new audio-visual situation, a couple of glitches. We didn't have audio for maybe the first 20 minutes, half hour of the meeting. I got several texts from people who were saying that. I want to commend Susie and her staff. They jumped on it and they got it running. There are some issues with the timing of the syncing, so it's kind of fun to watch it while you're speaking. I'm not. So, but we're making progress, and first night, I know that they did a lot of pre-work, and it's one of those Murphy's Laws things. Everything was working really well this afternoon until we started the meeting, so we're getting there.
Okay, thank you. And is it okay to announce that next Monday, all right, is going to be, the announcement went out today about the groundbreaking on Kansas Avenue, and certainly hope that you can attend at 7th and Kansas at 11 o'clock a.m. And we will start with Councilwoman Schwartz.
I'll be real quick. There's been a lot of activities that I'd like to thank the citizens of Topeka for being involved in, and I went to the Night Out Against Crime meeting after the Avondale Public Town meeting, and I couldn't believe the room was so filled with so many people planning for the Night Out Against Crime on August the 9th, so I encourage everybody to do that. We had the community garden meeting about the ordinance to be changed, and that was very well attended, and I'm really happy to see the city staff move forward with that idea. And then the Keep America Beautiful had 1,500 volunteers for their weekend of Get Down, Get Dirty, and that was really, it was a lot of fun. And my fellow councilman here did get down and get dirty in the Shunga. So I just wanted to remind you that this weekend is Happy Mother's Day, so Happy Mother's Day to all the wonderful mothers in Topeka. The Designer Show House is the last weekend this weekend, and it's in my district, and also the Parade of Homes, and there's a lot of homes in my district for that. So please attend those events. Thank you.
Councilman Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I would like to say congratulations also to the communication staff. They are wonderful new TVs. I'm a little scared by myself on a large screen, high definition picture, but I guess you all have to live with that every day. I only have to live with it when I look in the mirror. But everything looks great. Also, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. And on Monday, I attended the third and final edition of the community-wide book read, which was held at the Brown v. Boer historic site, the Monroe site, which was phenomenally attended and was very well put on by USD 501, Topeka Shawnee County Public Library, and the National Park Service. And it was a phenomenal experience. Everybody should go through it. And I know 501 is continuing to work in the community. They've been doing this for 3 years, actually. And they're going to continue to try to spread this out through the community, and I would encourage anybody to that gets the chance to participate that. Along those same lines, we're also entering May, which is and approaching the 60th anniversary of the Brown v. Board decision, which is arguably the most significant Supreme Court ruling in the history of this country, certainly in the civil rights arena. And I think it's very important to recognize our role in that struggle, the critical role that we played, and our unique place in history with that. Along with that, there are a series of events, and I will just read to you the events that are coming up this week on the 60th anniversary. The first would be the screening of the Freedom Riders, which will be May 8th from 6 to 9 at the Brown v. Board site in the auditorium. Next would be on May 10th. There will be Contemporary Reflections, which is Brown v. Board after 60 years. There will also be Art for Social Change and Shade images of the African American resistance. Those are May 10th from 1 to 4 at the Mulvane Art Museum. Also the 11th from 1 to 4 and the 13th from 10 to 7. And on May 10th from 2 to 4 at the Monroe School Brown v. Board site, Now Let Me Fly will be being presented in their auditorium. And finally, that evening on May 10th, there will be a community sock hop, which was a common occurrence at the Monroe School when it was still operating and around the time of the Brown decision, and an opening of the kindergarten room, which has been remodeled and redone. That will be May 10th from, I guess not remodeled, it's been redone, old modeled. May 10th from 6 to 9, also at the Brown v. Board Monroe site. Thank you.
Councilmember Harmon, Councilwoman Hiller.
I too have been very involved in the 60th anniversary events, and so it's good to have the list here. And also, this is the Courageous Conversations book that USD 501 was using. The public was invited to join a substantial number of educators there for the series of 3 that just ended. They are going to continue this process. They're including all educators in the whole district. It is a very powerful book to read, something we as a city could consider engaging as well, everyone who's involved in the city. It's remarkable, as we all know, how biases and race are part of our lives every day. We're aware of a lot of it, and then we all, no matter what color and race we are, overlook a lot of it, and we've got work to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Campos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd like to congratulate USD 501 for opening their science park. That happened last week. Congratulations. I look forward to hearing some great success stories coming out of there, pardon me. And also, I'd like to congratulate the Topeka Symphony Orchestra and Maestro Pickett for having an awesome first season. It's absolutely great. Juno is most definitely going to miss him, but we got ourselves one heck of a snag. So,
Good.
that,
Thank
send
you.
that on over.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Mrs. Cole, you're not going to tell about Noto, your grandson?
Mrs. Everhart.
Thank you. I wanted to say congrats on the tiger babies.
Yeah.
I have loved seeing the videos. I mean, I just think because they're such an endangered species, it's so wonderful to see that our zoo is producing tiger babies. That's wonderful. Cubs, I guess they're not really babies, but they look like little babies in that video. So congratulations. I just think that's wonderful.
Mrs. El Isla.
Just wanted to say that the city of Topeka is so on board with the tigers. The tiger is a very oriental thing, and that's why we have a delayed reaction, so that you're watching a Japanese movie here. No, seriously, Susie, thank you. It is wonderful. Like Nathan kind of said, it's kind of scary to be able to look at yourself so big, but it really just, it's amazing to see the change. I remember last year when we were talking in the budget about what we could do with the amount of money that we were going to receive, and there was no idea of what was going to happen. And I remember my first few meetings that we were here, that there was conversations about if we really wanted to talk about transparency, that one of the things that we had to do is work on our audio and work on our video. And it hasn't been a year, and it's done. And, well, it's still, I see you're saying that it's still not done, but there's significant progress that is visible. And that is wonderful, so thank you. I also want to say a big thank you and a shout out to all the people that attended all those meetings. It was wonderful to see the people standing up, saying what they felt, what they wanted to see with the half-cent sales tax. There is no better way of establishing policy than hearing what you have to say. So whenever we have activities, I highly encourage all of you to go on, show up, and we don't bite. We actually like to listen from you, and we look forward to your input. Also just want to include people, just remind people as we're having the conversations, budget is coming up. Keep talking to us, because we really want to hear what your priorities are as we're setting policy and the budget for the next year.
Councilman Manspeaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I realize we gotta wait 90 days, but any strings you can pull to get my kids in early? I know there's other kids in the community that wanna get in early too. You're the one to get a hold of, right?
I haven't even seen them yet.
Likely story. I just too would like to echo the comments about the takeover makeover event. Obviously, it's a big cleanup project for our community, and I was fortunate for the 3rd year in a row to work with Silverbacks This year, rather than be at the museum, which we had done the last 2 years, we moved to the Shunga. Last year, we thought we were the champions of the event with one shopping cart pulled from the creek on the museum's grounds. Within about I'd say a 200-yard span of the Shunga, we pulled out 4 shopping carts, several mattresses, the list kind of goes on and on. And I think that being in the Shunga Creek gives you a completely different vantage point on that resource in our community. Arguably, it's the largest watershed within our city, bringing quite a bit of stormwater from the southern and western parts of our city. It's disappointing, the condition that it's in, and I don't think that that's anybody's fault. I think it's easy to forget a creek and to forget that it may need to be tended to from time to time. I know that when you look through the city in terms of the floodplain and who's affected by the likelihood of that creek flooding is quite a few of our citizens. So I really was encouraged to be there on that day, but also was sort of energized in the thought process of how do we create more champions for our Shunga, not just so that they're out there, you know, it could be cleaned every week and still never get to where we want it to be, but to be champions for it to our community and talk about its importance and its value, not just in terms of a resource, but in terms of how it impacts the cost of many of the homes that are connected and buffer up against it. Then this weekend, to expand on a theme, Zach Sneathan, who's the head of the Landmarks Commission, and I walked around College Hill. We had the neighborhood cleanup, and the dumpsters were at Boswell Park, so folks could bring their trash and things that are sort of large size and odd and throw them away there. So Zach and I went around and cleaned out all of the storm inlets. And actually, some of them were in, you know, pretty bad shape, so they were completely clogged. I mean, nothing was getting inside of these things. I only turned 2 of them into 311 because they were completely full of mud, so there was not really any way that water was going through them. It's filtering through quite a bit before it actually got out of the storm sewer. But it's a really easy thing. And I don't want to be, you know, big brother government, but going out and sweeping your curb and picking up the leaves and the debris that are placed within the curb, if you leave them there in the fall, what tends to happen is that winter comes and winter makes them wet and they start to decay and they compact together and then they sweep in the first good rain and go straight into our storm sewer system. So the reality is that a little bit of effort on behalf of all of the citizens in Topeka could go a long way to making a more sustainable system for us and maybe a little less work and a little less cost on our stormwater maintenance. It's long overdue, but my LGBTQ package passed the HRC committee last night unanimously with 1 abstention. I hope to see it on the council agenda shortly. It sounds like it might come up here in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. And then tomorrow or in the very near future, I will be calling a policy and finance meeting. So if anybody has anything they would like that committee to review, I would be happy to have it entered into the agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And you know, council members, we are 9 different people from 9 different districts, and I think you see from the comments here, we have very diverse interests, and that's what makes us a good council. It's only with everyone's participation in our own way that we make this the city that we want it to be. And I think from the comments, you can see that we have a lot of momentum. We have a lot of good things going on in this city we can be very proud of. And I think they were pretty well covered here tonight, and I think the one Monday, starting with the downtown Kansas Avenue project, is sort of the star that's going to be there in front of us for several years. But each of these areas in each of our districts are very important, and on all from all the council members, and we get into budgets and all these, we have our own interests and priorities, but yet from all of this, we work together and we'll have a good project eventually. So with that, we are adjourned. I'm sorry. Again, we have public comment.
It's too late, he's at the gavel.
Well, there's nothing that says you can't do it.
What's around me?
We have public comment, and I would like to ask them to come forward. The gavel has been ended the meeting if you feel you should leave, but I would like to stay here and listen to the public comment.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
And the persons who have signed up, is Mr. Wakefield here?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Wakefield was the first person to sign up.
I would make a motion to suspend the rules to allow us to continue the meeting despite the striking of the gavel.
Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we extend the meeting. All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, we'll extend the meeting. The first person signed up was Mr. Wakefield. Is he here? Second person was Mr. Ledbetter.
Thank you, governing body. Joseph Ledbetter. I want to comment about the sales tax town hall meetings. I thought it was a very transparent process. I thought we took good records. Unlike 10 years ago when this was all done behind closed doors and there was no input and we got Croco instead of California and things like that. That's what happens when you don't have the public involved. You have mistakes. How this will work out, I don't know. We'll see. I will not ever rubber stamp something just because some group says we need to do this. I will never do that. I want to look at details. I want to see specific projects, and I want to see specific money assigned to those projects. If you can't do your homework, you shouldn't have it on the ballot. It should sell itself if it's as good as people claim. So it shouldn't really even need to be advertising. It should sell itself. I do hope that we have more money for streets than for bike trails because just talking about economic development, I mean, I ride my bike and I'll ride it on trails, but I have yet to see a client show up to my law office on a bicycle. Maybe that'll happen. But a lot of them use cars, and I think we need street repairs, and they do arrive on motorcycles too, and that's okay. I'll take those personal injury cases as well. But you really need to think about streets a lot. I want to talk about a couple things that Mr. Harmon said earlier. I do think it's time to have a town hall meeting about the Expo Center. And I've been through the facility, and it needs a lot of maintenance. And that's not the fault of H.R. Cook. I do blame the county commissioners for not paying attention to that building enough over the years because you can tell it. I think it's okay to have a town hall meeting and discuss it, and I think it's okay to push this vote off a period of time because we really have not vetted this thing well. There's still a lot of questions, even tonight, a lot of questions still. The other thing that Mr. Harmon talked about, not to pick on you, sir, but you had good ideas. The land banking idea is 1960s. It doesn't work anymore. It probably worked back then, but that's what Topeka spends most of its resources on. And that's been one of my biggest criticisms besides the total lack of transparency and not inviting the public to meetings. We don't know anything going on there. But the land banking is quite frankly ridiculous. They keep asking for more land, and I just did some statistics while I was sitting here. They did not have the industrial park for Target. That Target came in without an industrial park. They actually took that through eminent domain. But they actually used up 100 acres of land in 2008 for 2 projects. They used up 180 acres in 2011. They acquired 900 acres. And so over 10 years, they only used 1/3 of the acreage. So we still have a 20-year supply at this present rate. We don't need any more land for Topeka. And they should be telling you this. I shouldn't have to come up here and do the math for them. It should be that transparent, but it's not. So we keep hearing about their changing. I'd like to know how you know that because I can't get their minutes. I'd like to read their minutes, then I would know if they're actually changing their direction. And that should be transparent. Okay, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. And with that, unless there's any other business, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.